Mother-in-law refused to do as instructed and skips my 5-year-old insulin injection. Trigger warning. Chronic condition. My baby boy was diagnosed with type 1 insulin dependent diabetes. Our lives haven't been the same ever since. We've been struggling with accepting his condition as the new normal while trying to learn as much as we can and be able to provide our son with the best care and minimize the occurrence of hypoglycemic events. We live with constant fear of hypoglycemia/hyperglycemia. And we could not escape the reality that one small misstep could lead to fatal outcome and to prevent long-term complications. He needs to get his blood sugar checked 3 times a day before giving him his injections. We do this based on pediatrician instructions. We also avoid getting him exposed to large groups of people or taking him places to visit family and friends during the pandemic. We are taking necessary precautions to ensure he doesn't get an infection due to his weak immune system. My husband and I are on a limited income. My husband has PTSD and stress-related health issue. He no longer go out with friends. He cannot focus on his job. He has become distressed and would get angry very easily. I forced him to get treatment for his PTSD. If he wants to be strong for his son, he has only recently started taking medication and we are hoping he'll get better with them. When my mother-in-law found out about our son's condition, she wanted to be in the center of it. She started directly getting involved in everything, wanted to be there for doctor's appointments just out of concern, made backhanded comments about how poorly I'm handling my son's condition. She even said once that this happened to us after my husband and I stopped going to church on Sunday, and that it will get better if we start attending again. I take care of my son's health. I make sure his blood sugar is controlled and his injections are taken on time. I watch for any candy and treats that are not good for him and try to insert vegetables and protein into his diet. Last week, my husband and I were attending a group therapy. Then my husband asked if we could both go someplace quiet and eat dinner. I said yes. We dropped our son off at my mother-in-law's house. I've given her new syringes and the insulin bottle, alcohol wipes with finger pricks and other stuff I bought from the drugstore that day. My mother-in-law has experience and has been trained to give insulin shots and learned how to do it properly. However, we haven't visited in a while. She made a comment about how skinny my son is because of this diet that we are following. I told her we are just following the doctor's instructions. She said that apparently the doctor isn't doing a good job. She complained when I told her that he needs to get his blood sugar checked. Give him insulin injection before each meal and no treats or cakes. She said okay, and we told her we would call to check on him. At around 6 PM we came to her house to pick him up. He looked sleepier than usual, she said, probably because he was playing with the dog all day. I asked if she did as she was instructed, because that was very important to me. She said yes. We said goodbye and left. We got home. All my son wanted to do was sleep. He fell asleep on the couch as I was preparing dinner for him. My husband tried to wake him up, but he looked like he was dizzy, nauseous, and sweaty. My husband was concerned. He told me something was wrong. I ran out the kitchen. My heart was pounding. I asked my son if he had his insulin shots and what he ate at his grandma's house. He was clearly not a 100% focus switch. Freaked me out. He said no, he didn't take his insulin shots. I quickly pricked his fingertip to know what his blood sugar level was, and it was 300 milligrams per deciliter. I freaked out. I told my husband we needed to go to the hospital because my son didn't take his insulin shots like he was supposed to. We rushed him to the hospital. I was terrified. The doctor told us it was hyperglycemia. They started treating him in the emergency room, administered insulin and inserted IV fluids to rehydrate him, and kept monitoring and checking his blood sugar every 15 minutes. I was so terrified and angry at the same time. My husband called his mom and literally started yelling at her and telling her that our son has been taken to the emergency because of her recklessness and ignorance. She lied about giving him his insulin dosage. The insulin bottle hasn't been touched, but she got rid of the syringes to make it look like she did give him his injections. My husband argued with her for 10 minutes. He finished by saying he was taking her name off the emergency contact list because he does not trust her anymore. What she did was wrong and dangerous. My baby needs insulin to survive. and despite having given her enough information about the seriousness of his condition, she decided he was thin, so he doesn't need insulin, and needs more food, more carbohydrates and more suja, and skipping a couple of insulin injections won't be a problem. She doesn't fully understand my son's constant need for insulin to stay alive. It's that serious. But she chose to be ignorant about it, and handle it poorly. Lying about it, then admitting it, and coming up with an ignorant excuse, is what led my husband to this decision. She's officially off the emergency contact list and she isn't happy with that. She's calling my phone whining about how it was unfair, and that she didn't know. Her task was simple: follow my instructions, but she did this deliberately. She thinks these are my rules, not the doctor's, so she went against them. Thank God I'm blessed with a caring, understanding doctor who literally saved my son's life. I'm grateful to him for comforting me and reassuring me that everything will be fine. I honestly don't know what I would without such love and support from the whole staff. You and the children can stay, but she can't. Apologies in advance, because this is going to be long and venti. The last few months have been rough. Near the end of last year, we lost the house to a freak accident. We lost almost everything we owned. It's just been a really stressful time for my little family of 4. We were out for a school recital when we received the call from a neighbor, and we returned to find the house in flames. The fire department tried to save what they could, but the damage was really bad. We ended up selling the property and moving altogether because the repairs amounted to essentially rebuilding the house. I have been married for 10 years and my mother-in-law has never liked me. I still didn't expect her to act the way she did during this time. I always believed that, even if she didn't like me, she'd help me in a time of need, because I was the mother of her 2 grandsons and the wife of her son, and I made them happy. I was wrong. On the night of the accident, we needed a place to stay temporarily, at least until we could have a few moments to breathe and get our bearings. My husband suggested we stay with his mother for the night. It was late, and it made the most sense to us both. We drove over to the house. My boys were half asleep in the backseat, and we left them in the car when we went to speak to mother-in-law to explain what was going on. She was very sympathetic at first and said she had no problem with my husband and my son staying, but I would have to make other arrangements. My husband lost it with her and began to yell that she was being unreasonable, and she refused to budge. In her words, I wasn't true family and she'd never blessed our marriage in the first place, so I was not her responsibility. We left and spent the night in our car, and we got a motel the next day. She began calling and inviting us over to stay again, and she said that she'd graciously permit me to stay in the garage for a few days. Again, we didn't take her up on the offer and my husband told her that she was being very disrespectful. My mother-in-law got very angry in response and said that we were spitting on her generosity. She then offered to keep the boys so that they wouldn't need to stay in a motel while we put our lives back in order. Again, we rejected her offer. We heard nothing from her for a few days until we learned that she had been bad-mouthing me to people. She was claiming that I was tearing the family apart in this time of need with my grudges. From her point of view, she'd opened her house to us in an instant, and I turned her down and forced my husband's sons to live in a cheap motel because I didn't like her. My husband set the record straight, but mother-in-law did not ease up. She made an official complaint to the fire department claiming that I had caused the accident purposefully to destroy the house and force the current situation. She said that I was money hungry and had designs on her house and this was all part of my plan to steal her house from under her. I was taken in for questioning, and I understand why due to the nature of the allegations, but I was cleared off everything as the investigation proved it was an accident and there was no way someone could deliberately cause the accident. She later showed up to the house while we were going through it to see what could be salvaged, and she made disparaging comments about how we should not be upset as these were just things. Yes, they were things. I'm not upset about the stove and the couch and the bed. I'm upset about the arts and crafts projects my sons made for Mother's Day every year. I'm upset about family heirlooms that are irreplaceable. I'm upset about the memories that were lost. The house was a fixer-upper when we bought it, and we did a lot of the restoration ourselves. We had professionals handle things like the wiring, but we did the painting and the sanding, and whatever we could to save money. My youngest son had a gaming console that he owned, which had been left at her house before the accident. They'd been over for a weekend with their father and had taken the console to keep them occupied. Mother-in-law stated she didn't have it and we must have taken it back. My son argued with her that he'd had a conversation with her about leaving it there for the week so his cousin could use it while visiting. She gaslit him to the point of frustrated tears and kept saying we'd taken it back and it had probably been lost in the accident. The truth came out from others that mother-in-law had given it away after we'd refused her initial offer of hospitality. The shining ray of light through all this has been that this is a straw that broke the camel's back for my husband. We all went NC after these incidents and a few more, and we cut contact with her shortly before moving to our new place. She has been trying to get our address from family members, but she hasn't had any luck just yet. My husband made it clear that he'd have no problem cutting off anyone else in the family who gave her our address or contact information. If she can't support us when we are at our worst, she doesn't deserve to be there when we are at our best. My white mother-in-law told me I wasn't American and didn't behave American because I'm not white. So I'm a woman of color who is married to a white guy. Before dating him, I had dated guys of all races, and my strongest relationship was with another person of color. My now husband had previously only dated people of color, but I knew he didn't have a fetish or anything. I thought his experiences would have made him more woke, but it turns out it just led to him being blind to his family's racism. When we started dating, he told me his mother was the nicest person ever. Then I met her and found that she was cold, selfish, narcissistic, petty, and jealous. Later, I realized she was also racist. After we got married, I wrote a blog post about marrying into a white family and having white privilege for the first time in my life and how that made me uncomfortable. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law flipped out and asked my husband how I could have married him if I hated white people. They then called me reverse racist. Around the same time, we adopted my 10-year-old sister, same race as me. When we brought her along to visit the in-laws for Thanksgiving, they told us she couldn't be in the family photos because it was just for the grandparents, mother-in-law and father-in-law, and their lineage. Now, after Black Lives Matter became more mainstream, we attempted to talk to them again about race. I felt it was finally going somewhere when out of the blue mother-in-law emails me and says that she's got it all figured out. It's not about race, she says. It's about her expectations. She just thought, because I was born here, that she could expect me to be American and behave American, when in fact I'm not. So she should just adjust her expectations and not expect me to be American, and we will all be fine and dandy. Am I justified in telling this woman to go duck herself? Edit. About the photo situation, we told them it was either all of us or none of us, and they eventually relented. They later sent us a blanket with the photo printed on it and got mad when I didn't thank them for it. I wanted to set the thing on fire. We have not been to visit them since, though mother-in-law has come to visit a few times. DH is mostly on the same page now about how racist his family is, but he struggles to get angry about it or to confront them properly. He is too nice to them and has very low expectations of them. We are working on it. I will show him this post. Edit 2. I just wanted to say that I'm tearing up reading these comments because honestly what my mother-in-law said to me really hurt, and I feel like you guys have stood up for me more than anyone else ever has. I'm aware that I haven't so problem. Edit 3. All the mentions about counseling reminded me of the fact that mother-in-law is a therapist and she told me that she has never had trouble with the Asians, African Americans, and Native Americans she works with not behaving American. I feel sorry for her clients. Update to racist mother-in-law. My email to her. Thank you everyone for the support yesterday. It gave me the courage to speak up for myself. I wasn't going to say anything to mother-in-law, just go no contact and let my husband deal with her, but he didn't get to it fast enough and frankly I didn't trust him to do it properly. So this is what I wrote to her. I just had to correct something in your email. I'm American, I was raised American, and I am just as American as you are, if not more so. The word you are looking for is white. Upper middle class white. I don't know if you know this, but most of America is not like you. Another thing, I do say thank you to white people, because I know that this is expected in white culture. I'm offended that you said I don't say thank you, because I do, and it's something I've worked at my whole life to get comfortable with, and still am not. But I do it anyway. I said thank you to you every time I wanted to be polite. Every time I wanted you to like me. I went to extreme lengths to say it, including writing a card and leaving flowers to thank you the first time I stayed at your house, even though I did not feel comfortable or welcome there. If I didn't say it, which was only a few times, it was because I no longer felt the need to be polite, which I felt would have been fake at the time. I feel that all of our interactions have been tinged by 3 factors: your dislike of the role I've played in your relationship with husband, your dislike of me personally, and your racism. I never knew exactly how much of each was present, but the racism was confirmed when I realized I could not talk about my experience with racism around your family. My family also experienced racism around your family. I asked husband to open this dialogue recently in the hope that we could move past the racism, but every try has been met with racism repeatedly. The first and second factors I've always been willing to understand and accommodate, but the last I'm not, and never will be. My first draft was snarkier, but I edited it out, since I want to know for myself that I did the right thing. I have since blocked her, because I don't want to hear her response. Dear husband, read every single one of your comments yesterday and was very overwhelmed. He agreed with you all and said that he feels angry with himself and knows he needs to do better. Iked him on the email above, so he knows I sent it and supports me in going no contact with mother-in-law. Mother-in-law definitely will not be seeing my sister or me anymore, and what we do with future kids will depend on if she changes, but I doubt she will. Dear husband is still planning on talking to her directly, and I will update again after that. I'm nervous to hear how she responds, but I'm too curious not to know. Edit. About the whole saying thank you thing. It's not that I don't say thank you, or find it rude to say thank you. In my culture, we do say thank you in formal situations like to service people, strangers, teachers, etc. We do not say it often to family members, because it feels too formal and kind of ridiculous. For white people, imagine going to a culture where you were expected to say thank you for a lot more things than you're used to, or for different things. Like when you enter someone's home, you have to say thank you for allowing me in. That sort of thing. I realize that this kind of politeness is expected in a lot of American families, not just white, but I do think it's mostly white American families and non-immigrant families who have adopted it from white American families. I do not know many immigrant families that are like that. Edit 2. I'm not saying that only white American families do the please/thank you thing, and that if you do it, you're adhering to white social norms. There can be overlap between cultures, but that doesn't mean it isn't an expectation of white American culture, and many non-white American cultures do not have that expectation.